Hey everybody, Gary Edelman, American Battlefield Trust, and we have two opportunities at major Tennessee battlefields. You've heard of them, Shiloh and Stones River. We've got 186 acres. We have the opportunity to get it's a 20-to-1 match. And let's start at Shiloh, where the Tim Smith of the West will tell you a little bit about the action there on our virtual guided driving tour. Why doesn't he drive on the tract we're trying to preserve? Because it's never been preserved as a park. Check it out.
Make this loop here and go back kind of around the area. This is the area that Stewart's brigade, David Stewart, will hold in terms of that Union left flank. You know, in the movie Gettysburg, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, we are the flank, you know, we are the flank. Well, this is the flank that the Confederates are trying to turn, and they actually hold out. Very few of them really do yeoman's service. This is also the Greer tract that the trust, and this is probably back around the centennial, the sesquicentennial, probably 10 years or so ago. They bought, you bought what, 500-600 acres or so down in there, and it's really a major acquisition. So thank you trust folks.
And the tract we're trying to preserve actually goes right up to the Greer tract, especially along with some contiguous acreage we've been able to preserve. So it could be contiguous with the whole park and maybe can be interpreted someday. Now, over to Stones River with Jim Lewis, where you're going to see him describing some of the first day's action. And note when he says the Williamson Pike, and then look at the maps associated with this particular appeal, because you'll see just how far away the edge of the park is from this critical morning action. Take it away, Jim.
Where we're standing right now is about as far south as a person can walk within Stones River National Battlefield. Just behind me here, you can probably see some cars going back and forth. That's the Wilkinson Pike, which, although it's a wider paved road today, is actually one of the historic roads that runs through or around the battlefield. The armies, once they finally arrived here, Rosecrans will actually begin his campaign on the day after Christmas, 1862. Take the Union Army about 4 days slogging through the mud, muck, sleet, and rain to finally arrive here at Murfreesboro. We're about halfway we're about in the center of the Union Army at the opening of the Battle of Stones River. It extends about 1.5 miles to our north to the Stones River, and behind me across the Wilkinson Pike about 1.5 miles to our south, with the Confederate Army anywhere from 1/2 to 1/4 mile east in lines running roughly parallel just outside the town of Murfreesboro. So two armies settle in for the evening on December 30th, and Generals Rosecrans and Bragg begin to plan their attacks, which, as luck would have it, they both come up with essentially the same plan, which is to attack the enemy on his right flank, get in around behind him, and cut off his supply line and retreat route. While they're doing that, the soldiers begin to try to bed down as best they can. Everybody's been called out of their camps. On the Confederate side, the Union Army is traveling, without tents and things like that, so they just lay down in the mud. That evening, according to several accounts, up and down the line, as things got dark, some of the bands began playing music to kind of lift the men's spirits. And what ensued was sort of what was referred to as a battle of the bands. You'd have, Dixie and Bonnie Blue Flag coming from, the Confederate side, and the Union side, Yankee Doodle, Battle Cry of Freedom. Everybody's trying to outplay, out loud everybody else, and even they're competing with each other on the same side, so it was a cacophony. And then, somewhere along the line, and nobody knows who, but one of the bands started playing a relatively new song called Home Sweet Home. And bit by bit, one by one, all the bands began picking up that song until it was like you could hear it in unison throughout the entire battlefield. And it was said even in some places the men lifted their voices up in song. And then when those final chords died out, in one of the most poignant events on any battlefield during the Civil War, I imagine you could have heard a pin drop, because now you have 81,000 soldiers contemplating the fact that they may never see Home Sweet Home again, because they are now facing one another. The battle begins about 1.5 miles to our south. The Confederates have the plan that will place them in the driver's seat to begin with. Rosecrance's plan for attack involves crossing the Stones River and then working his way along the east bank into Murfreesboro, which is going to take several hours to happen. But Bragg has basically lined up his men so that his left flank extends out beyond the Union right flank far enough so that his orders are simple. When the sun comes up, attack. They will hit, they'll start to try to wheel around, they'll kind of roll that line up, and then basically every unit to the north will be looking to their left, waiting for the men on their left to move forward, and then they will move forward. It's an echelon attack. It's Bragg's favorite plan. He uses it almost every battlefield. And when the Confederates do make their initial attack against the far right end of the Union right wing, they're not ready. They're being very accommodating. This seems to, you guys were at Shiloh already once, so I mean, we've been through this before, haven't we? Union soldiers are still just getting up at daybreak, making little fires, trying to boil up their coffee, and the Confederates come streaming in. McCown's division, followed by Cleburne's, is a battering ram that hits the right flank of the Union line. Well, it's pretty easy to tell what happens after that. They get driven off pretty quickly. In fact, one Confederate soldier from Ector's Texas Brigade said that as they were moving through those Union positions, he literally saw dead Yankees lying on the ground clutching their coffee cups because they didn't even have time to drop them. They had knocked them down so fast. A little farther up the line, a Union soldier talked about running to the stacks of arms, pulling them out, ramming down the round, getting ready to fire in, only to realize they had nothing to shoot at because they were already 300 yards behind enemy lines. They had already been completely overrun. And so it looks like the Confederates at the outset are going to win this battle. And bit by bit, they will begin to wrap and drive the Union right wing back and begin breaking it. First it's Johnson's division, then it's Davis's division. Finally, they reach Philip Sheridan's division, whose left flank actually lies on the Wilkinson Pike out here. Sheridan had his men up and ready to fight at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so when the initial Confederate attacks hit him from the front, he was able to knock them back. But because of what's happening beyond him to the right, the Confederates are streaming in and around behind his rear. What that forces Sheridan to do is actually order his brigade commanders, once they win their fights in front of them and see the enemy start to pull back, he orders them to counterattack, to drive the enemy back farther so that it'll buy him some breathing space, and then bit by bit, piece by piece, he'll begin refusing the right end of his line, turning it from running basically north to south until finally his lines will be in these fields and along these tree lines where we're standing right now at about 10 o'clock on December 31st, 1862, facing directly to the south. He's pivoted his entire division to place it in a V-shaped formation with Negley's division over here to the east through these tree lines over here. And that's what brings us really to the crux of the fight that we term now as the slaughter pen.
All the Union efforts of Sheridan and so many other people seem in vain, but one after the other, they're slowing the Confederate force down, allowing more Union reinforcements to arrive, and that will allow the Union to hold the field at Stones River to the last. And we hope that we'll be able to hold this acreage to the last. If you can help us to preserve this acreage, click the link associated with this post and share it with your friends. We hope you can get involved, and thanks already for all your support of battlefield preservation and education.